4, 3, 2.
How does the Civil Rights Movement compare to the Black Lives Matter movement? Well, to answer your question, the Civil Rights Movement was a movement to end segregation in America. Many people were unhappy with the rules surrounding the rights of black people in America, and there were many injustices surrounding the lives of black people. Many African Americans today still struggle with these injustices. While it might not be that easy to see or understand, there's a lot of hate, racism, and prejudice that still exists today. This is why the Civil Rights Movement is similar to the Black Lives Matter movement. Both of these movements demanded social change and the attention of the media. The Civil Rights Movement is mostly similar to the Black Lives Matter movement in the way that both movements were met with police violence and had many injustices that sparked and fueled their campaigns. The Black Lives Matter movement is a movement to bring justice to the police killings of young black men and women in America. It is important because it brings into light the many injustices of the legal system and how it goes so much against young black men. A prime example of this is the Algiers motel incident. I drew this source from the website called Dangerous Minds. The incident includes the deaths of many young black teens who were killed wrongly by police in the motel. The poor young men and women were lined up against the wall and tortured in a death game. Another good example is when the man arrived at the Algiers hotel. The National Guard landed right in front of him. He raised up his hands and said, "Don't shoot, man, I don't have a gun," and asked to be detained and go to jail. But instead, a shotgun bullet went straight through his chest and he fell to the ground wrongly because he didn't do anything and he was unarmed. This shows the injustices that people had to deal with in the Civil Rights Movement. A savior we can look at for this is Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall was a lawyer who was famous for taking cases that went against innocent black people and prevailing. He worked for the NAACP and was a civil rights leader and activist. He worked as a lawyer for the NAACP to help young black men who were wrongly accused of crimes. He only focused on people who were innocent and did not work for people who were actually guilty. Continuing on, many of the police who killed black men or beat them without proper cause get away on a lot without any serious charges because of the legal system today and how it leans so heavily off of white males. Just think about it. An underclass black man lives off the streets and versus a white male police officer. Who would you be more likely to believe in this situation? But this does not mean that these movements were unsuccessful. They both brought on justice and social change, which brings me to my second point. Another reason the Black Lives Matter movement is similar to the Civil Rights Movement is because they both caused social change and were sparked by injustices. The Civil Rights Movement gave birth to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which outlawed segregation altogether. But it did not expel hatred and racism in America. This is one of the examples of its success. The Black Lives Matter movement brought justice to many cases, including the shooting and killing of Walter Scott. The officer convicted of his murder was sentenced to 20 years in prison, due to mainly of the political pressure and protest from the Black Lives Matter movement. To sum it up, the Black Lives Matter movement and the Civil Rights Movement were similar in what they were dealing with. They both dealt with injustice and caused social and political change. There are still things we need to work on. Our justice system is still on the weak side, and there are still shootings happening today. But if we continue to push and make not only America, but the world aware, we can still bring justice to those who have been hurt the most. By learning from the victories and leaders of the civil rights movement, we can eventually reach true equality.